Journeyverse Journeys, Part 2, by Tenhawk. Xander came out of the freeze, lunging for the heart of a vampire who wasn't there anymore. What the? He managed to get out as he overbalanced, spun twice, and landed on his ass. On the ground, he opened his eyes in pain and saw 3 sets of feet standing a short distance away. Groaning, Xander let his eyes travel up the long legs. The cute, not thinking about that now. Finally, he settled on the 3 faces looking back at him. What happened? The 3 sisters looked at each other uncomfortably. The muggers got scared off. Prue managed to keep a straight face. Xander didn't. First he snorted, then his snicker broke free, and finally he was rolling on the ground in laughter, much to the ire of the eldest Halliwell. What's so funny? Prue didn't notice the smothered laughter coming from her younger sister. Was that the best you could come up with? Xander managed to get out between breaths. Come on, even I can tell that you're witches. What type? Wiccan? Haitian? Those are the only 2 types that I know. How? Prue trailed off, then got an elbow from Prue. Oh, please. I'm driving along, minding my own business, when a vampire flies out of an alley and lands in my back seat. I dust them, then come over here and see 3 women taking on a demon and a dozen vamps. And the kicker is that they're holding their own. What else could you be? Last time I checked, Wonder Woman worked alone. Although I do see some similarities in fashion sense. Phoebe was laughing openly now, but Piper wasn't amused. Hey, you're not one to talk about our fashion sense. Xander chuckled, picking himself up off the ground. Sorry, my bad. All right then, Piper said, mollified. Xander looked at Prue. You were the one tossing the vamps around, right? He didn't wait for a response before he went on. You're powerful. My best friend's Wicca, and she can barely manage more than a pencil. You, have friends who are witches? Phoebe was interested now. Sure, I've known a few. Only one's still around, though. Xander finished the statement a little sadly. What happened? Prue asked quietly. Life, Xander answered. And death. It can be a tough world when you look beneath the surface. The 3 witches could understand and agree with that. Halliwell Manor, San Francisco, California. You've been demon hunting since you were 15? Phoebe was incredulous. Xander shrugged. Such is my life. Truth is, it beat the hell out of what I was doing before that. The sisters looked at him in shock. What in God's name were you doing before that? Not a damn thing, Xander grinned. Piper looked at him oddly. You mean you chose to fight vampires and demons? Yep. But why? Piper couldn't understand the choice. Demons always sought her out, trying to kill her and her sisters. She couldn't fathom seeking them out. Why do you? It's a destiny thing. Ah, Xander understood now. I have a friend with that problem, the whole chosen one scenario. She doesn't much like it either. So why do you do it? Piper asked again. Think about it, Piper, Xander said, his face serious. Now that you know about the evil floating around out there, could you turn a blind eye? Could you leave someone to die? Piper was silent for a long time, refusing to speak, even though the answer was clearly written on her face. Finally, it was Phoebe who put her feelings into words. Of course not. Xander accepted that. You're a lot like my friend. You both have to understand that your destiny doesn't define you. You define your destiny. Easy for you to say, Piper said sourly. Xander smiled. Maybe, but I can tell you this. I've been dealing with prophecies, destinies, and all sorts of mystical gibberish for 3 years now, and I have yet to see one shred of evidence to convince me that our lives are decided for us. Piper smiled. Thanks, I think. Xander decided to stay in town for a while, finding it refreshing to find others engaged in the good fight, as he and his friends were. The truth was, it was lonely sometimes, facing off against the darkness, and this was the first time he'd seen evidence that there were others holding back the dark. It felt good. 1 week later. Is Xander coming over today? Piper asked her sister, smiling slightly. Phoebe grinned, then looked a little sad. Yeah, but he's leaving soon. He says he wants to get a little further from Sunnydale than San Francisco before he goes back. You two gonna keep in touch? You bet. This time Phoebe's grin was wide and pure. I finally taught him how to access a web-based email account I set up for him. All he has to do is get a computer, and presto, we're in touch. That's good, Piper smiled. They all liked Xander, even if he was more than a little annoying at times. Xander whistled as he hopped up on the steps to the manor house, admiring the craftsmanship as he did. Don't build them like this anymore, he thought. He stopped at the door and exchanged pleasantries with the Halliwell's handyman, Leo. Hey man, how's it coming along? Hey Xander, Leo answered as he leveled off the window sill he was working on. Pretty good. I got a few more weeks before I'm anywhere near done with this place, though. Old places like this need a lot of upkeep, don't they? Xander was genuinely curious. He enjoyed doing some of the simple carpentry at home. Yeah, Leo smiled as he tapped the sill into place. But they're worth the extra effort. Heck of a lot nicer to be around than the prefab box. Xander laughed, agreed with the observation, and rang the doorbell. Xander, Phoebe grinned. Come on in. You're just in time for another lesson. Xander groaned. I managed to avoid computer lessons for years before I came here, and you managed to suck me into letting you teach me how to surf the web? How? Phoebe grinned at him and just walked away, leading him to the kitchen and her laptop. Xander's eyes glazed as he watched her hips sway. Oh yeah, now I remember. After the lesson, in which Xander learned more about web searching and email than he ever wanted to know, Xander decided to push his luck a little. Hey Phoebe, Xander began timidly. I was wondering, would you like to go out to a movie or something? Why, Alexander, Phoebe grinned when he winced at the use of his full name. Are you asking me out on a date? Xander smirked at her tone. Yeah, I suppose I am. I hope you have something better than that kaleidoscope to wear. She smirked to herself as she nodded at the shirt. Xander looked down, chagrined. What's wrong with my shirt? Phoebe raised her hand and started to take off her fingers, opening her mouth to start off a list as Xander interrupted. Rhetorical question. Phoebe grinned, but lowered her hand. So, do you? Yeah, I figure I can pull something of a single color out of my trunk. It was a few hours later that Xander showed up at the manor house again, this time dressing in a loose forest green shirt and a black pair of jeans. Phoebe grinned at him when she answered the door. Better, but you still need work. Hardy har har. Real funny. Xander smiled, a little chagrined. He didn't understand the whole deal with clothes. It was more important to be comfortable than anything else. At least, that's what he always wanted to believe. Can we stop by Buckland for a bit? Prue wanted me to bring some things by for her. No problem, Xander said easily. What sort of stuff? Spell casting? No, she laughed. She forgot a lunch. Oh! Xander comically smacked his head as he held the door open for Phoebe. Buckland Auction House, San Francisco, California. Prue Halliwell was setting up a new auction when her sister and Xander came through the door. Hey sis, Phoebe grinned, holding up a brown paper bag as she moved forward. Xander held back a bit, looking at the items on display in the room. Truthfully, he was a little surprised that no one stopped him from coming back this far. There were signs all over the place saying, employees only. I guess that being a guest of the curator cuts a lot of red tape, Xander mused as he examined the various items gathering dust in the large room. Man, Giles would love this place, Xander whispered under his breath. He could see ancient pottery, urns, chalices, and other items that he could remember Giles's books and private collection. Xander moved through the room, running his fingers lightly over some of the more dusty objects, and finally stopped in an odd item that was resting on a black velvet cushion. What's this? It was a metal rod, a little less than a foot long and almost 2 inches in diameter. A perfect cylinder, one that seemed to be generating its own light. Xander shook off that observation. Just a reflection, that's all it was. Just a reflection. Xander reached out hesitantly, his fingers brushing the cool surface of the cylinder. For an instant the glow seemed to grow, but then it was gone, and Xander drew his hand back. He turned and walked over to Phoebe, not noticing that the brief glow of the cylinder had pulsed once, then faded as he turned away. "We done?" Xander asked as he walked up to the sisters. "We're done," Phoebe said cheerfully, as she grabbed his arm and let him out. "Let's go see that movie. Bye, Prue." "See you, Phoebe." Prue turned back to her work as the other two left. None of them noticed the faint glow return to the cylinder. A glow that slowly expanded until it encompassed the small artifact and then faded, taking the cylinder with it, and it vanished.